It's time for readers to stop underestimating Loki, because like it or not, this character is stronger than the likes of Kaido and Big Mom, and likely even Roger and Whitebeard, as insane as that sounds. When we were first introduced to Loki, we were told that he could end the world, which initially just seemed like exaggeration by simple-minded giants. But after realizing that Loki has, undeniably, the physically strongest body in One Piece history, from birth, Yonko level conquerors haki, a devil fruit that is more powerful than every single Logia, and another fruit that can supposedly end the world and threaten Imu himself. Maybe it's time to start acknowledging that Oda was saving this absurd Frankenstein's monster of broken abilities for the end of the story precisely because Loki breaks the norms of One Piece's strength too much. And if you don't believe that, then the simple question I would ask is, why then is Oda nerfing Loki for this arc? Why is Oda making it clear that the Loki who we are about to see fight in Elbaf is actually severely weakened and won't be back at full strength for another month? Could it be because Loki cannot be allowed to be at full strength till the final arc of One Piece? Because if Loki were at full strength today, then he would genuinely outshine our protagonist Luffy in Elbaf. And that is something Oda can simply never allow to happen in any arc. If you're skeptical, then watch the rest of this video as I break down how all signs point to Loki being a lot stronger than readers realize, because Oda has genuinely been saving the best for last. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe. But first, if you're into anime-style MMOs with real multiplayer content, Season 2 of Blue Protocol Star Resonance just launched, and this is the perfect time to try it out. Blue Protocol Star Resonance is an anime-style MMORPG where you create your own hero, explore a colorful open world, team up for dungeons and raids, or just relax with activities like crafting, fishing, and building your own homestead. And Season 2 just went live with a ton of new content. A brand new area called Bahamar Highlands is now open, along with new monsters, 6 new dungeons, and starting a few weeks in, 3 large-scale raid dungeons will open up that test teamwork and coordination. The main story also continues in Season 2, introducing new NPCs and uncovering more secrets of the world. If you like customization, the homestead system got new decoration themes, plus you can now invite friends over and host multiplayer hangouts. And the best part is, if you want to try it out as a new player, you can jump straight to level 60 to experience the core content right away. Plus, everyone gets exclusive Season 2 login rewards delivered in-game. There are also redemption codes waiting for everyone, so if you want to check it out, just click the link in the description to download Blue Protocol Star Resonance. Join the Season 2 fun and jump into an anime MMO adventure with your friends. So to begin with, the biggest reason that lots of readers are skeptical of the idea that Loki might be above the Yonko or even stronger than Pirate King level characters, the first is simply that Loki is too new. One Piece is a very established world with a lot of pre-built lore and hype that has been built for certain characters over literally 1,000 chapters. We've had so long to build up the stories of Roger, Whitebeard, Kaido, Shanks, Mihawk, but Loki was this guy that we'd never heard of. His strength had never been talked up in the story because Oda had conveniently just chained him up on an island, out of sight, out of mind for everyone else in the world. It is very difficult to sell readers on the idea that this new character that we'd never heard of, that no one had ever talked about, that's being dropped into the story practically out of nowhere, might actually be stronger than almost all of the previously established characters in the story. That is a hard pill to swallow, and One Piece usually doesn't really work like that. Now, the second reason that readers may doubt Loki's strength, which is very, very valid, is Shanks. We know that however strong Loki is, Shanks did at some point successfully capture him, or at least that's what we've been told. Therefore, the assumption is that as strong as Loki is, he can't be as strong as Shanks, and therefore it's unlikely that Loki is Pirate King level or above. But we will address the Shanks point towards the end of this video. Let's first start by tackling point number 1, which is this hesitance to crown Loki as one of One Piece's strongest characters ever, because it feels like he's too new and we know too little about him. But we've actually gotten a lot of information about Loki in the past 40 chapters, and just looking at all the knowledge that we've accumulated about him, point by point, if you were just to list this all out on paper, Loki seems like almost this fantasy fan fiction character whose full power set is just too broken to realistically fit into the One Piece world. Literally from birth, Loki replicates Kaido's iconic introductory feat of surviving a fall from the sky. Loki is essentially immediately established and then repeatedly reiterated to be physically the strongest character in One Piece, as in he has the toughest and strongest body of any character that we've ever seen, with no real comparison. I mean, ancient giants are by far the physically strongest race in One Piece, and then Loki is a freak among freak even by the standards of ancient giants historically. So you've already got the physically strongest character in One Piece history as the base starting point, and then of course he is a Conqueror's Haki top tier as well, with Conqueror's Haki on the level of Herald, and Herald himself being at least a Yonko level Conqueror's Haki user. So with just this alone, Loki is essentially a Yonko level character. But Oda has done something absolutely unprecedented with Loki, which is on top of this, Oda has given Loki two of the most powerful devil fruits in existence. Loki has both Ragnar and Elbaf's royal family fruit. Now, we have only just begun to tap the full potential of what Ragnar can do, but this fruit basically seems to have multiple Logia abilities packed into one, and the important point is the scale of these abilities is basically unprecedented in the story. The lightning that Loki is able to call down with Ragnar is exponentially larger than anything that Enel could do. It is literally the size of entire mountain ranges. But then on top of that, it has ice abilities like Aokiji on an insane scale as well. With a single attack, Loki could casually freeze a monster that is also far larger than literal mountain ranges. From what we've seen, Ragnar has the power of multiple Logias, but amped up even further. The closest thing I can think of is the versatility of Big Mom's elemental abilities, but Ragnar just does it on a far, far greater scale. But the crazy thing is that Ragnar is just the tip of the iceberg, because Loki has an actually even more powerful devil fruit on top of Ragnar. The world-ending fruit that Loki ate that Elbaf has been housing for centuries. This is a fruit that Oda is really keeping close to his chest. He's been hyping up the fact that Loki can destroy the world, but it sounds like a lot of it stems from this fruit in particular. Herald himself felt it would be the end of the world if he ate this fruit. And that's coming from a character who is arguably the world's strongest at this point, and who has been alive for centuries himself and seen pretty much everything the world has to offer. And most importantly, Rox also said that this fruit, this Elbaf fruit, is one of two fruits that could potentially defeat Imu. Again, Rox knew how strong Imu was, he knew that he himself couldn't defeat Imu as he is, but he felt that if he had Herald at his side, having eaten that fruit, then even Imu could be defeated. That suggests that whatever this fruit is a fruit of comparable power to the Nika fruit. Loki has the only mythical Zoan in the world that is actually comparable in power to the Nika fruit, and potentially even Imu's own mythical Zoan. So to put it all together, Loki is a character who is introduced who is even bigger, stronger, and physically tougher than our previous freaks of nature, Kaido and Big Mom. He has Yonko level Haki just like them, but then he also has Blackbeard's unique advantage of having two completely broken devil fruits rather than just one. But the even crazier thing is that one of his fruits, Ragnar, is like a way more powerful version of Big Mom's fruit, and his other fruit is hyped to be a way more powerful mythical Zoan than Kaido's fruit. So do you see what I mean when if you put everything that Loki is on paper, it is genuinely like some unfair fan fiction character that has been concocted and inserted into the story? Because if you were to just sit down and fantasize some hypothetical character that would be stronger than any of One Piece's Yonko, something like Loki is likely what you would come up with. But now you might be saying, well, Morge, just because Loki looks absurdly strong on paper, is Oda actually going to introduce this character who destroys most of One Piece's previously established hierarchy of strength? And I would say that all signs of what we've seen so far of Loki suggest yes, and all signs that indicate Loki's role in the future also suggest yes. Let's start with what we've seen so far. So the moment that Loki killed Herald, Loki immediately became the world's strongest creature, at least excluding Imu. And if that sounds controversial, it really shouldn't be, because Herald was very clearly the strongest in the world outside of Imu at that point in time. Whether or not Loki is still the strongest outside of Imu today, that is up in the air until we see a lot of characters go all out in the modern day. But at least at that point in time, 14 years ago, Herald was the world's strongest creature, and Loki was the only one who was able to fight him equally. As a reminder, Herald is very clearly established to be Rox's equal, and it's very possible that Herald and Rox are above many of the characters that we get afterwards, just Roger, Whitebeard, and so on. After all, Rox and Herald's clash is to date the only Conqueror's Haki Clash in One Piece to have the effect of knocking out everyone in a 5-kilometer radius. No other Conqueror's Haki Clash in One Piece was on that level. Not Shanks and Whitebeard, not Kaido and Big Mom, not Luffy and Kaido, not even Roger and Whitebeard. But Rocks and Herald's Clash knocked out everyone, and that means everyone, including whatever God's Knights were in the vicinity, whatever Marines were in the vicinity. We know that at least one admiral had been sent up there, whether or not they were unconscious or not at that point, who knows. But Marijoa was a full-on military zone, and everyone was KO'd. So that, to date, has not happened again in One Piece. And I would add that Herald and Rocks' subsequent duel had by far the largest scale Conqueror's Haki clashes that we've ever seen in the story as well. Now, if you want to say that this is all just Oda just having fun with things, and that this doesn't mean that Rocks and Herald themselves are above all the future pirates that we get, that's totally fine. Even if you want to say that Rocks and Herald are maybe at best equal to Prime Roger, Prime Whitebeard, or something like that, or if you want to take things a step further and say that Rocks and Herald were at best only Kaido and Big Mom's level, that's fine, because the thing is that the version of Herald that Loki fought was a significantly upgraded version of Herald. Herald's already absurd strength had been buffed by Imu, such that he was significantly stronger and had immortality and regeneration. Herald, 14 years ago, was without a doubt stronger than anybody else on the ocean. And what he did in that castle was also completely unprecedented in One Piece history. Herald was fighting hundreds of Elbaf's strongest giants at the same time as Shanks and Skopper Gaban, and none of them could stop him. He was just walking through everyone. This is just absolutely insane to think about, because Shanks at that point in time was already having his legendary duels going toe-to-toe with Mihawk for the title of World's Strongest Swordsman, and Skopper Gaban was actually only barely past his prime at that point. He was still in his 50s. And Elbaf's army of giants that Herald was also fighting were at that point in time still canonically the strongest army in the world, meaning Herald at that day in Elbaf was so powerful that even two characters who themselves are minimum admiral level at that point in time, backed by the strongest army in existence, could not stop him. The only other character in One Piece who compares to this is, of course, Dami Reversied Rock, which again fits the parallels between Herald and Rocks. That is until Loki showed up with Ragnar in hand and the fruit having been consumed. Loki is very clearly established to be the only one, even against the monstrosity that Herald now is, this unstoppable force of nature, that Gaban legitimately believes would bring ruin to the world if he got out of Elbaf, against that character who should be at this point at least above Yonko level, if not above Pirate King level. Loki is able to go clearly toe-to-toe with him, and even put him down. And people might say, well, Herald let Loki have that final shot, and that's true, but Herald only regained control over his body to let Loki have that one final shot. Prior to that, Loki was going dead even with Herald, and arguably even winning, with Herald not holding back in the slightest, with his mind completely consumed by evil. At this point, if you're looking at Loki without allowing preconceived notions to cloud your judgment, Loki does legitimately seem like a character who is legitimately at least as strong as prime Pirate King level characters, if not stronger. As insane as that sounds, it just appears to be true. And this is backed by many other following statements. Not only is Gaban shocked that someone was able to defeat Herald, who Gaban was convinced would bring ruin to the world as an unstoppable monster if he escaped Elbaf, so too was Imu even genuinely shaken by the idea that someone could actually defeat Herald. And keep in mind, Imu has genuinely never been impressed by the strength of even a single character in the entire story so far, outside of Joy Boy. And remember, even today, Gaban seems to believe that despite Luffy having defeated Kaido, this does not necessarily mean that Luffy can defeat Loki. And if you still doubt that Loki is as strong or stronger than the old Legends of One Piece, then here's why you should start reconsidering, because Loki's role in the final arc is actually starting to seem to be extremely significant in a way that would demand him being that strong. So to begin with, one of the most prominent figures in the mural, and really the most prominent figure at the side of Nika in the big battle against the devil, is this ancient giant, a being that seems very reminiscent of Loki. And this is important because a lot of signs point to Loki actually being Luffy's most significant counterpart in the battle against Imu in the final war. Again, we go back to the two fruits that Rock said would be necessary to defeat Imu. We don't know if one of the fruits is necessarily the Nika fruit, but a lot of signs suggest that that is likely the case, because the Nika fruit does seem to be the antithesis of Imu, the thing that Imu fears, and it is the fruit that the Gorosei have been desperately trying to get their hands on for centuries. And now we know that the other fruit is the fruit that Loki has eaten, the Elbaf royal family fruit. These two fruits are necessary counterparts to defeat Imu himself, meaning that, as the mural suggests, Loki may be the most important parallel to Luffy in the final war. And you might be saying, well then, oh, that just means that Loki is equal to Luffy right now. But no, that's the thing. Here's the catch. Oda actually had to nerf Loki for this arc. Oda established from the beginning of the arc that Loki is starting this whole storyline extremely injured, and he's actually not going to be back at full strength for another month. That is a very telling decision by Oda. That suggests that Loki may actually already be at the level that he needs to be for the final war, where Loki will be instrumental to defeating Imu. And it's actually Luffy who still needs to get to that level. Therefore, Oda had to actually nerf Loki temporarily for the Elbaf arc to make things more even. Keep in mind, Oda usually never does this sort of thing, because it's simply unnecessary. Sometimes side characters in a given arc might be around Luffy's level, but they never need to be nerfed to make sure that they don't outshine Luffy. For example, in Skypiea, Wiper was shown to be equal to Luffy. Jinbei and Fishman Island may have been comparable to Luffy at that point in time. Yamato and Elbaf was equal to Luffy at the start of the raid, but at the end of the day, none of these characters are ever in danger of outshining Luffy. Loki is the first and only time I can think of where Oda has actually said from the start that no, it is legitimately necessary for me to make this character significantly weaker than they actually are. I cannot think of a reason for Oda to do this other than if Loki were at full strength, Luffy would no longer be our strongest protagonist on Elbaf. And I especially believe that because in this case, the enemy of the arc is the strongest villain in the story. It's God himself. Imu is sitting upstairs. There is no reason to handicap any of our protagonists. But Oda still decided that no, Loki cannot be at full strength in this arc. Now, of course, I'm not saying that Loki at full strength can beat Imu, but to put it simply, based on the fact that Loki was equal to an amped up Herald, Loki is legitimately stronger than anyone that Imu faced at God Valley. So we cannot take the fact that Oda decided it was necessary to weaken Loki for the storyline lightly. But with all that being said, now we can get to the final hang-up that readers might have surrounding the narrative of Loki being potentially the strongest, which is what about Shanks? But first, this winter, you can become Aokiji with the first ever Devil Fruit inspired hoodie, the Ice Hoodie.
Oh, that's cold.
This is a fully fashioned, multicolored jacquard hoodie engineered at the stitch level. The pattern is literally knitted directly into the fabric, creating a rich, icy texture that won't fade, crack, or wear away over time. And right over the heart, you have the embroidered devil fruit detail. The hoodie is 100% cotton, breathable, and built to last. This level of quality for One Piece inspired fashion is something you truly cannot get anywhere else. And this January, the first 30 people to get their Ice hoodie will also get any 2 posters you want for free, including the 2 brand new exclusive Aokiji posters that can only be gotten with the hoodie. All hoodies are made to order and will take some time to ship. So make sure you get your Ice hoodie today, the first and only devil fruit inspired hoodie in existence. So as we know, Loki has been captured and kept here at Elbaf thanks to Shanks having defeated him. Now keep in mind 14 years ago, the day at the castle that the battle against Herald happened, Loki was clearly far stronger than Shanks at that point in time. Shanks and Gaban were completely useless against Herald. And keep in mind, Shanks was no slouch at this point either. This was the period of time that Shanks would have been having his legendary duels going toe-to-toe with Mihawk for the title of World's Strongest Swordsman. And yet there was this huge gap back then between Shanks and Loki. So reconciling Loki's strength with him having been captured with Shanks leads to 2 possibilities. One, that Shanks is just way stronger now than anybody realized, which is possible. I mean, Shanks did get the comparisons to Joy Boy's own Haki, but then the other possibility is also that we don't yet have the full story between Loki and Shanks. If we have learned anything from this flashback, it's that you can't just believe the stories that you were told initially because there's always more context. Everything we'd initially been told about the battle between the Rocks pirates and the Roger pirates and the Marines turned out to be a lie. There was so much more context that we were completely missing. Loki having murdered his father in cold blood also turned out to be a lie. There was so much context surrounding that turned out to be missing. There are a lot of times in One Piece that we hear something that turns out to be be kind of true in a sense, but also is missing the larger part of the story. And I think it's especially interesting that Loki seems to consider Shanks a coward rather than an impressive warrior. So ultimately, until we get that story of the Shanks and Loki situation, which Oda seems to have intentionally hid from us yet again, I don't think there is much point in using that as a detractor for Loki's strength when we have no idea how much truth there is to that event. But what we can look at is everything that we have actually seen of Loki and everything that established characters such as Emu, Harold, and Gaban have said about Loki, all of which points to Loki being undeniably at least Yonko level and potentially even stronger than many of these Pirate King level legends that we have grown accustomed to. Despite it contradicting a lot of our preconceived ideas about One Piece's hierarchy, we might have to get used to the idea that we are in the final war. And if Loki is set to be a pivotal figure in Emu's defeat, perhaps even alongside Luffy, a character so strong that Oda could not even allow him to be at his full strength until a month down the line when presumably the final battle will be happening, then like it or not, latecomer to the game or not, Loki may just be that strong. So let me know if you believe Loki is stronger than the old legends in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like and subscribe. And if you want to hear one more surprising reason that I believe that readers are still dramatically underestimating Loki, you can listen to my weekly podcast that just dropped by becoming a member or by supporting me on Patreon. Link in the description below.